You can follow every single money rule in the book and still feel like you're running on a treadmill. You could save 10% of your income. You can max out your 401k. You can cut out your daily Starbucks. And 5 years later, you still feel like the scoreboard has not shifted at all. I know this because I lived it. I was doing everything right and I still felt broke as f. And here's what nobody tells you. Money does not follow rules, it follows laws. And the difference between rules and laws is the fact that rules are merely suggestions and they can be broken. Laws are like physics. They work and they just are, whether you believe in them or not. I made a video a while back on the psychology of money, and that's the mindset. That video was all about what to believe about money. This video is all about how money actually works. The mechanics, the physics, and the structural laws that separate the people who have a good living from the people who build generational wealth. 8 laws, and the last 2 are actually ones that nobody talks about, but they're the ones that have made me the most amount of money in my life. Let's go. Law number 1, wealth loves time. This is the most counterintuitive law, especially for young, ambitious people. Because when you're young and hungry and you're a hustler, you just want freaking results now. You want to see the bank account grow. You want to see the numbers on the scorecard go up. You want to flip things. You want to make the cash. You want to be in the grind, the hustle, the energy. I get it. I was the same way. When I started one of my restoration companies, the vision back then was just basically hustle, make a bunch of money, flip the business, maybe sell it. That was the vision at the time. But here's what I learned. People who hold are always richer than people who flip. If I had sold my restoration company for a quick flip, let's say year 1, I would have missed out on a ginormous opportunity. You see, as the company grew over the past 10 to 15 years, it went from $1 million company to a multi-8-figure company. The customer base grew. The team started doing most of the work. I was able to step away from the business. And now it's just a giant cash printing machine. And everything compounded bigger and bigger and bigger. Now it's on the journey from $20 million of revenue to $50 million of revenue, all by itself in its own special way. That company is literally worth multiples more than what it had been worth had I sold it 10 years ago. Now, if you don't believe me, look at Warren Buffett. He made 95% of his wealth after age 50. And it's not because he got smarter after age 50. It's because he had more time to hold on to things, to compound. The law is simple. Fast flips, slow results. You want to move very quickly with decisions, but be patient with outcomes. Time is the multiplier that turns a good business into generational wealth. And I would argue that it takes about a decade until that compounding effect truly matures. So instead of picking your next flip, go find the one thing that you are super passionate about that you're willing to dedicate the next decade of your life towards. That time will pay you in dividends, I promise. Law number 2, income is not wealth. This one broke my brain when I finally understood it. I was running my restoration company. I had a great lifestyle. I was truly, I would say, rich. Could buy anything I wanted, had the nice car, was able to go on the vacations, everything. But in reality, I wasn't wealthy because if I stopped working, I would stop making the money. Then I started shifting my focus. Instead of focusing on income and how can I make money, how can I build that restoration company into an actual business that is earning equity and is actually worth something that could run independently of me. And the minute that I did that, it shifted my entire perspective. And my income didn't drop, but my net worth shot through the roof. Look at the Forbes 400 list. 0 people got there from earning a salary. 0. Not a single one. They all got there by earning equity that compounds. Now, here's another fun fact. Not all of the Forbes 400 are entrepreneurs. You can earn equity within an organization as an entrepreneur. And in fact, in my circle, I've got dozens of entrepreneurs that have equity and their equity compounds, but they technically work with me, or some people would say they work for me. The key is to not just focus on the income. The key is to actually focus on what are you actually owning and what is actually compounding. There are 2 types of people in the world, earners and owners. Earners trade their time for money. Owners build and buy assets that generate them money while they're doing other things. The shift that I have to make and the shift that you should make is going from the question of how do I earn more to the question of how do I own more? How can I build or earn equity into something? How can I earn something that appreciates while I sleep in synergy to all my other effort? That's the game. Income keeps the lights on, pays for your rent. Equity is what builds the empire. Law number 3, leverage is the multiplier. Naval Ravikant talks about it in his book. There's 4 C's of leverage: capital, code, content, and collaboration. Capital is by far my favorite. When you think of leverage, leverage is this concept of putting a small amount of time, energy, and effort and having a massive outcome. Capital is an example of that because you could use capital to put small amount of effort, buy back your time, and get an absolutely massive outcome. And when I think of capital, my favorite way is actually thinking about debt. And most people think that debt is dangerous. They think that debt is absolutely bad. It's horrible because you claw yourself into a hole that you can't claw yourself out of. Now, I partially agree with that, specifically in consumer debt. Most people use debt to buy things that they don't even need to please people that they don't even like. And that's how you get yourself into that consumer rabbit hole that big corporate wants you to do. But when it comes to investing in yourself, when it comes into business moves, debt is actually the single most powerful form of leverage. Let me give you the math. If I buy an asset worth $1 million, let's say it's a business, or let's just say it's a house or a building or something like that. And let's say that asset appreciates by 10%. I've made $100,000. On an investment of $1 million, that's about 10% return. But if I only take $200,000 and put that down on $1 million building, and I borrow the rest of $800,000 from the bank, and that $1 million asset still appreciates by 10%, is worth $1.1 million, I now made $100,000 on a $200,000 investment. And the reason I did that 50% return is because I used debt. We're literally looking at the same asset, same building, the same appreciation, the same everything, but you have a 5 times higher return. That is the power of leverage. So I hope that this shifts your perspective on debt. I think everybody watching this video should 100% utilize debt as a form of leverage. If there's a mastermind program or a coaching program or a tool that you can't afford because you don't physically have the cash in the bank to go buy, but you can finance that thing, that's an example of leveraging debt, because then you'll absorb and learn that skill, then you'll go apply it to your life. You'll be able to apply it to your life and have those compounding effects without sacrificing your cash position. Rich people use leverage to multiply their returns. Broke people are scared of leverage because they don't understand it. The difference is just understanding when to use leverage and how to use leverage, which I hope I was able to kind of peel back the curtain on for you a little bit. Law number 4. Cash flow funds equity builds. McDonald's sells burgers and fries. That's their cash flow. But the real business and the real wealth that McDonald's is building is actually in real estate. The prime real estate and restaurants that they're able to own because they have the cash flow from the burgers and the fries. Think about it. You go into every single big city in the world and you see a McDonald's, and they're typically in the most prime, expensive, luxurious locations. And some are in shitty locations too. But think of those places that they were able to buy. They're using the burger and fry income to pay the mortgage. Now they got this prime piece of real estate, and that is soaring through the roof because it's in this central area where everybody wants that piece. Burgers keep the lights on, real estate builds the empire. So if you really want to be a wealth builder, you need to think of the same thing. You want to have a high income skill or a job or a business that produces the cash to keep the lights on, but then you want to use that cash to redeploy it so that way you could own pieces of stuff that appreciate over time. So think about it as being a high performing sales rep at, I don't know, a B2B software company, right? You're going to have a base component, a commission component, and you're going to be a badass and you're going to be able to earn some sort of equity, right? What I would do if I were you is use my base salary to keep the lights on. I would actually go back to my boss and renegotiate my commission to get double the amount of equity within the company. And I'd be an absolute badass and superstar so I can get equity within the company. And then the better I do as a salesperson to generate revenue for the company is actually growing. And then my equity within the company is also appreciating at the rate that I'm contributing as well. So it's a win-win-win. I call this being the intrapreneur. So the play here is build a skill that is super valuable to where you could start having the cash flow engine. And then once you have the cash flow engine, use some of that cash to then go acquire the asset and own part of the engine. Law number 5, asymmetric bets win. When I think of an asymmetric bet, I think of a bet where the risk is the lowest and the reward is the absolute highest. And everything that I do in life is betting on things where the risk is very low and the reward can be completely bananas. Let's take this example. If you were to bet on somebody making a 3-point in a basketball game, would you bet on Shaquille O'Neal or would you bet on my 2-year-old son? Now let's add another rule to the game. If somebody doesn't show up because they're sick, the other person wins. So now, sure, you're sitting here and saying, well, Shaquille O'Neal could for sure make the 3-pointer, but there's risk, right? Shaquille O'Neal can get sick, he could die, something can happen to him, he could say, fuck this, I just want to let the son win or whatnot. But you would still take the bet on Shaquille O'Neal, right? Why? Because the risk of something happening to him is probably very low. And the reward of him actually being able to hit the 3-pointer is actually very high. Whereas on the flip side, the risk of my son being able to make the 3-pointer is like super high and the reward's actually rather low. So everything in life, it's all about taking these asymmetric risk versus returns, making these giant bets. And if you look at the way venture companies or venture funds work, they actually do the same exact thing. They go out and they'll take $100 million fund and they'll spray it across all of these bets where they believe they're investing in the Shaquille O'Neal example that I gave earlier. And yes, 9 out of 10 of them might fail, but 1 out of 10 will hit the moon and return the entire fund. When I think of asymmetric risk versus reward, I think of how many bets am I taking on a daily basis? And when I think of where is the risk lowest and where is the reward highest, it's typically making a bet on myself because I know I can control the risk of how Alex Duda shows up. I know that if I make it all about me and my ability, I can control that risk completely. And I know that the reward of who I can become is super high. Now, here's the deal. Not every bet that I've made on myself has worked. Not everything that I've done has produced a result. But in the long run, if you look at the fact that I went from $0 to $100 million in 10 years, I think it's pretty good. You don't need to be right every single time. You only need to be right once in your life in an incredible way. Structure your life so that way your downside is capped and your upside is unlimited. And your life and your wealth building ability will change significantly. That's the asymmetric bet. Law number 6, risk is not what you think. Oh man, this grinds my gears. Every single financial advisor on the planet will tell you the same thing. Diversify. Don't keep all your eggs in the same basket. And for the average Joe Schmo, the person who has no idea what they're putting their money in, I think that's pretty solid advice. But here's the secret truth about how wealthy people operate. They don't follow that rule. They fucking concentrate. Warren Buffett even said diversification is just protection against ignorance. If you know what you're doing, you don't need to spread your bets across 50 things that you don't know a thing about. A couple years ago, I made the decision to sell all my real estate, sell all my stocks, sell absolutely everything, and go all in on restoration. It was the one industry that I absolutely knew and I absolutely controlled. And after building my restoration company, I built a software company in the space, a coaching company in the space, another restoration roll-up, and I just went bananas in this one space that I can control. And now when I spend my time on stage, it's bananas the asymmetric bet that I'm taking. Because I'll talk about a restoration principle and I'll get customers from our restoration company. I'll get other restorers that want to partner with us. I'll get people who want to buy my software and people that want to buy my coaching. It's absolutely genius. It's great. And yes, I am hyper concentrated on building within this niche of restoration, but I have no competition because there's no other Alex Dudas within the restoration space. The framework is simple. Ask yourself 2 questions. Do I understand this industry, this craft, this one specific niche? And do I have control over the outcome? And if the answer is yes, then you have to concentrate. You have to go all in because that is where you're going to build massive wealth. If the answer is no, then I think the first thing you should do is go find something to go all in. But if you must, and you really want to invest, and you really want to do something, then that's where you diversify. So if you know nothing about real estate, you know nothing about hard money lending, you know nothing about crypto, don't take all your money and put it into Bitcoin. Go and spread it out across multiple. And listen to the typical financial guru advice. The guy who puts his life savings into some sort of crypto that he learned on Twitter, that's not investing, that's gambling. And sure, you can hit the jackpot, but more likely than not, you're gonna lose everything. The guy who puts his life savings all into an industry that he believes in and has a decade worth of experience in, that's calculated concentration. And that is how fortunes are made. Now remember, law number 7 and 8 have maybe more money than anything else that I've ever taught. So make sure you pay attention here. Law number 7, boring beats sexy every single day and twice on Sunday. And this is the most cringe law that nobody wants to hear, especially the younger generation. Because honestly, it's not exciting. It doesn't make great Instagram content. It's not the hype that everybody talks about. Nobody dreams about waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to suck out poop water out of somebody's basement. But I'm telling you, it's the most consistent law of wealth that I've ever seen. If you go to the place where nobody else wants to go, if you master the pond that nobody else has mastered, you will literally be building wealth hand over fist. When I was building my wealth in my 20s, everybody I was talking to wanted to build the next Uber, build the next dropshipping company, make it on the cover of Forbes magazine. While I was sitting there, literally sucking out poop water out of people's basements, building this unsexy business that has built me more wealth than I can ever imagine. And the fun part is now everybody wants to buy that business. I'm like, sorry guys, it's so great for me. I'm not going to sell it to you unless you want to pay a premium for it. Now here's why boring wins. There's less competition because nobody is going to say, hey, I want to be a restorer when I grow up, mom. And the market isn't saturated with young people who just want to win. Most of these boring markets are saturated with old boomers that are looking to retire. And they're like in protection mode. They're in wealth conservation mode. They're in like, I want to go fishing mode. There are not that many hungry, really driven, young new entrepreneurs that want to take market share away from them. There are also higher margins and premium prices because there's not enough people to actually do the work. When I was building my house, I have an acre lot and I was looking to get a landscaper to do the work. I literally reached out to like 100 companies and only got 5 bids. Like, the work is easy. You just got to show up, give them a quote rather quickly, do what you say you did, ask for payment, and ask for a review. It's literally every single boring place of the economy. It's literally that easy. And the last part that's my favorite about these boring areas is it's recession proof. AI can't replace it. Robots can't take it away. Like, it's not going anywhere. Sexy businesses is where you hear those stats that they have a 90% failure rate. Boring businesses, I would argue they have a 90% success rate, especially if you go find a mentor or a coaching program like my Evolve Restoration Mastermind to help supercharge you into the future of that specific industry. Law number 8 is the speed of implementation. This law has made me more money than any other principle in my life. The gap between knowing and doing is where all the money lives. Everybody watches the same YouTube videos, has access to the same AI tools. Knowledge is literally flooding the market. The difference between the person who builds wealth and the person that's stuck in their ways is not a knowledge gap. It's not a capital gap. It's a speed to execution gap. The reason I win in the spaces that I win is nobody moves as fast as I do. Like, by the time somebody's planned the business plan and put together the model and thought about starting the restoration business, I'm already at $10 million of revenue within that specific market. Like, idea, note, action. Like, I'll be sitting with a mentor right now face to face, and within 5 minutes, there's a text message going to my EA, and within an hour, that thing has already been implemented within my business. Speed to execution is how people win. And here's the deal. It might sound scary because you're thinking, oh, well, if I go really quick, it's not going to be thorough. There's not going to be quality. I'm going to actually fail. But here's the deal. Failures is actually a win, because by the time the average person is planned out and launched in the market, I've already failed 15 times and learned 15 things to not do. And they're already in my SOP and in my playbook. The person who executes within 24 hours will always beat the person who spent 6 months planning. Period, full stop. Because while the planner is still researching or waiting for the perfect moment, the executor has already failed 15 times, learned from it, and moved on. Speed is the key. Time is the enemy. Momentum is the only currency that counts. So I want you to practice that right now and take a key takeaway from these 8 laws and go apply it to your life today, because that is how you turn this video into $1 million value versus 90% of the people watching this are just going to be yep, and not do anything with it. 8 laws. Let me give them to you one more time. 1, wealth loves time. Be patient with your outcomes. Think of things in decades, not in hours. 2, income is not wealth. Income makes you rich, but equity is what makes you wealthy. 3, leverage is a multiplier. Use other people's money to fuel your hopes and dreams. 4, cash flow funds, equity builds. Use both. 5, asymmetric bets win. Protect your downside and uncap your upside. 6, risk is not what you think. Concentrate, don't diversify. 7, boring beats sexy every time. And 8, speed of implementation is key. You must have a default to action mentality. This video was the mechanics, the physics on how money actually works. If you want the mindset component, I shot this video on the psychology of making money. Go click the link and I'll see you on the other side. Now that you understand the mindset and you understand the mechanics, you literally have no more excuses. Comment the word laws below and I will send you a cheat sheet with all of these laws so that way you can put it on your desk and see it every single day. Now it's your time to stop watching, to start building, and go. Remember, if you take action on this, you will become wealthy. If you do nothing with this and you keep scrolling, that's a choice that you're making, but you'll get stuck. See you guys on the other side.